Hi, everyone, and welcome to the panel on taking a brand public. I'm Ashir Garg, and I'll quickly introduce Foundation Capital to some of you who are new to the firm. We were founded in 1996. We're an early-stage venture capital firm with more than 30 IPOs to our credit. Our main investment areas are fintech and enterprise, and in enterprise, we've invested in everything from applications to infrastructure and security, dev tools, and everything in between. We usually invest in seeds and Series A's, almost always before a company has any revenues or even a product. Our goal is to invest in extraordinary dreamers and founders and help realize their dreams. And so if you're dreaming today about starting a new company, well, contact me or one of my partners. Moving on to the panel, I'm really excited today to have with me two exceptional marketing leaders, Stacy Epstein and Julie Legal. Welcome to the panel, Stacy and Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Stacy started off in sales and Oracle, went on to lead marketing at SuccessFactors in its very early days, all the way through the IPO. Then she went on to ServiceMax as its founding CMO, took on a CEO role at a startup, and then most recently joined Freshworks as its CMO and took a second company public. Julie started off in Salesforce in 2002. A couple of years before it went public, she was part of the team that took it public, took a few years off away from Salesforce and then came back. I guess you couldn't resist that. And then spent another decade finally leaving as EVP Global Marketing for Salesforce to join Slack as CMO and took that company public as well. It's very rare for us to have two CMOs who've taken four companies public between them. So perhaps we should just start with a few questions around taking a company public. Stacy, tell us a little bit about what that process was like for you.
Yeah, really fun. We just went public on September 22nd. So it's very, very recent and fresh. So a lot I can talk about there. Certainly a lot different than the SuccessFactors IPO, which was in 2007, kind of night and day from that process. I joined in March of this year. So I joke that on day one of my job, I was handed the IPO timeline and I was like, wait, what? Like, no, we don't have enough time. So immediately week two launched into writing the S1 and the prospectus. And we really, and many of you may not know who Freshworks is. I hope you at least do now from our IPO, but you will by the end of this call. So we make CRM, ITSM, and HR solutions accessible to everyone. So we make it really fast and easy to get up and running. And because of that, we cater to companies of all sizes, small, mid-size, enterprise too. But really, our goal is to make it available. Great CRM, great ITSM available to companies of all sizes that may not have all the money and resource to get live. Our growth, and we were doing over about 400 million in ARR at the time that we went public, still growing at over 50% and near cash flow positive. Those numbers and that great traction came through a really sound and profitable PLG model. And because of that, we hadn't really invested a lot in brand, which is why a lot of people have never heard of Freshworks, even though we're at a great scale today. And so the IPO, and part of my excitement in joining as CMO was to really help put Freshworks on the map and get that awareness that I think we deserve for our traction. We really viewed the IPO as our great opportunity to get the word out. And so the IPO, I know for everybody, the IPO should be considered a big marketing event. For us, it was a stake in the ground when we needed to have our positioning right. We needed to have our messaging right. We wanted to blanket the market with messages, not only about our stock being available for trade, but about who Freshworks is and what our mission is, and try to really convert the IPO into a pipeline and revenue generating event. So I think we did that. We had a huge increase in traffic. We've been able to maintain a pretty solid uptick in our traffic. Obviously, it takes time to convert that through the funnel. But I think from my perspective, obviously I'm excited to take the company public, but I really wanted to view that as a marketing pipeline and revenue generating event for the company.
And clearly, you've taken a company that, as you said, because of its PLG motion, wasn't really well known, across the U.S., and it's become, you've definitely changed that through the.
We're getting there.
Yeah. Julie, you had a very different experience as an IPO, I'm sure, given how big a brand Slack already was prior to the IPO.
Yeah,
talk about that experience.
Yeah, and people always say that, and I think maybe CMOs, our brands are never as big as we would like them to be. And certainly if you look at Slack's awareness numbers, definitely when I started within Silicon Valley in the high tech world and stuff, off the charts, everyone's heard of Slack. And then you look beyond that internationally, outside our, New York, San Francisco, it's a very different story. So still a lot of opportunity there. So I will say I joined Slack much further along in the process. They had already filed their S1, but echo a lot of things Stacey said. I mean, the S1 to me was like the ultimate creative brief. It was really, a time that the company puts down on paper and puts out to the world. This is who we are and this is what we stand for, which is a real gift as a marketer. Hopefully you have a chance to shape that, but no matter what, you have a chance and a responsibility even to take what's in there and help translate that out to the rest of the company and to the rest of the world to really showcase who you are. And that's definitely how we viewed the opportunity at Slack. And I also thought of it as sort of like, especially given the timing when I started, is like the first drumbeat of many to kind of tell our story out in the world. I think that's another thing. Whole company really rallies around going public, and that is hugely important. It requires the entire company to come together. But I think certainly as a marketer, your job is to look at the 12 months beyond that as well and make sure you figure out how that story continues, how that awareness continues. But a couple of key things that were really important to us at Slack as we thought about going public were not just the message that we wanted to send in terms of the words and who we are, but like how we conveyed that message. And one of the most important things that we had was really Slack was all about our customers and how, our customer success was our success. And, we were really about making them sort of the heroes of the story. So the branding that we did reflected that. It was a bunch of sort of customer logos. We did activations around customers. And we actually had the majority of the people standing up on the platform ringing the bell weren't necessarily our executives' employees. It was a mix of our executives and some of our top customers. So I think you can think of lots of different ways to showcase your brand and your story, and how you do that message is important. And then I think the final thing is you think about all of your audiences, because I do think a lot of the company is thinking about your investors. And obviously that's hugely important. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to have a successful listing, but you need to be thinking about your employees, about your customers, about your prospects. And I think, in the marketing seat, you definitely always have that lens of how all your stakeholders weave together. So thinking about, what is the opportunity? What do you want to say to them? They're all going to see the big stuff, but how do you make sure you're curating experiences and messages for each of them in the ways that you can touch them? Like, how are your salespeople going to talk to your customers differently that day with the messages that are coming out in the world? Are they in sync with what's in your S1 and what they're going to be seeing on CNBC that day?
I'd love to build upon what Julie said, and I'm guessing. I mean, we don't get the privilege of seeing our audience and seeing hands raised, but I'm guessing not everybody on this call is in the process of going public now or in the very near future. I will say, when I contrast my experiences at SuccessFactors and at Freshworks, when we got to write that prospectus. And for those of you that don't know what an S1 is or a prospectus, that's the document that gets filed with the SEC. That is literally like the book of this is what our company is all about. It's all of our metrics. It's literally the Bible it's a narrative about everything that the company is. You will also create a video that is 20 to 30 minutes long that will also encapsulate that. You should try to know that now. It doesn't matter if you're one or two people just getting your startup off the ground, and if you are, a she wants to invest in you, or if you're 50 people, if you're 150 people, if you're thousands of people like we are. Now is the time to truly understand who you are, What is your mission? What is your vision? What is the value that you deliver to your customers? I think we all, especially in this PLG world, we all go to features. Well, what we do is we deliver, customer support, and no. What you do needs to be framed in the value that you deliver to your customers. Are you helping solve issues? Are you helping them grow? What are you like? That is who you are. The features and the functions just support that. And I think another key piece is your differentiators. Now, Freshworks is in incredibly crowded markets of CRM and ITSM, and we different from SuccessFactors. Like, we were kind of the only game in town when we went public. So, like, what makes you different? You need to really know that, have it written down, and it's never too soon to do that. When you get to the point that hopefully you all get when you're going public and it's time to write the S1, hopefully you'll just pull it
comes out.
You already knew it, but like, I think that's it's just such a foundational thing to understand your positioning, to understand your differentiators, to have it documented in a messaging framework, to make sure the whole executive team and the sales team and the marketing team are all aligned to it. Like, it almost has nothing to do with going public. You should be doing it right now.
It's true. It's like the S1 gives you like almost like the government stamp, like this is a true document. But hopefully, if you've done your job, and certainly, as you look at marketing leaders, they should help you do that job. If you're a founder CEO, of like, how do you codify what your company is? And the S1 is almost like the coming out of that in such a public way. So you really want to have it down. And if you're doing a great job up until then, it's a natural evolution.
Yeah.
Well, I think what both of you said resonates so much for me, because most companies are so heads down building features and competing with X competitor or Y competitor, or trying to win X customer or Y customer, that what founders really need to do is to take a step back and decide, because there are choices to be made. What is the future I'm trying to build, even though that future may not exist today, and it takes time and it takes lots of iterations to articulate in a way that can stand the test of time and is meaningful both to customers and to partners and to your own employees. And it's clearly not something that most founders find themselves doing naturally. Any advice on how to go about it? Stacey, you were in the role of a CEO.
Yeah.
You probably have to live that.
Yeah. And I do think, PLG fuels some of this, but I do think most founders have a use case, a hypothesis and a use case that they're trying to solve, right? And they're building features to solve that. And that's where they spend most of their time. And I'm sure Julie will agree with me. More times than not, founders don't understand the value of positioning and a messaging framework, and even a branding exercise. It seems like sort of a fluff thing to do that, like, they don't have time for because I'm busy building this product and taking it to market. And if we could help reframe this as the operating manual, when you really understand your vision and your mission, when you really understand the value of your offering in the eyes of what the customers want, when you really understand your differentiators, that can help you guide the features and functions that you build. And breaking it down that way is what helps everybody to understand the importance. I think when it's just viewed as like, oh, it's a fun branding, if you were a car, what car would you be? Like, it doesn't seem like a compelling exercise to go to until you really understand that over the course of the company's journey, there's going to be all kinds of junctures in the road and decisions that need to be made, and market changes, that if you have that framework to operate from, you can keep everybody on the same page about how do you make decisions about what you build and where you go next with the product. Getting started, I mean, it is not something that you can just read a book and grab a template and get going. Like, there is a process to it. I mean, I have a framework that I like to use. And I have a way I like to take the team through it. I mean, if you're big enough and you can afford it, you can certainly get help from a positioning agency or contractor. But I think really the simple steps are, again, the most important thing is to make sure you understand the value of what you do from a customer's viewpoint. If you don't, ask them. And remember, those change. And as you add new features, the value deliverer changes. So it's a living and breathing document, but that's where it starts. To me, the most important things are, what is the value you deliver and what is your differentiator? When I look at Freshworks, we do CRM, we do ITSM. We're here to help our customers really delight their customers and employees. Our differentiator is that we make it really easy to do that. So when you look at Salesforce, you look at ServiceNow, like, okay, 12-month to 18-month implementation, hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees, and you still might only be using just a fraction of the features that it actually offers. Our value prop's totally different. You can go live in a matter of days, a matter of weeks, maybe months, depending on how big you are. So we make it easy for you to delight your customers' employees. Out of that is our tagline, Delight Made Easy. It's our value that we deliver. It's our differentiator in the market. It's not perfect. We did it really quickly because we were going public. But a tagline just supports all of the messaging framework and the positioning. But I think those are the two key components. What's the outcome for the customer? How do you do that differently from any other option that they may have?
Makes a lot of sense. And Julie, you were at Salesforce for a long time, and of all technology companies, perhaps, Salesforce has built, one of the most powerful brands. Can you talk a little bit about that and talk about some of your experiences there?
Yeah, and I have to laugh a little. I think maybe I've had the unique experience of having worked for founder CEOs who are incredibly passionate about messaging and positioning and words and things like that. So never had to convince Mark Benioff or Stuart Butterfield that those things were important. It was so interesting about Salesforce, and thinking a little bit about some of the things we were going to talk about today is, in a lot of ways, we were not a traditional company, and that we didn't invest in like what people traditionally think of as capital B brand. Like if you look at advertising, like certainly in the past couple years, Salesforce has sort of started to invest there. But for most of the 13 odd years I worked there, it was the exception, not the rule. Occasional placements, things like that, stuff around events. But we really built our brand in a different way. We built our brand, first of all, a lot of the things that Stacey is talking about, and being very crisp on who we were, what made us different, and always incorporating the customer voice in that. But we really built the brand through consistency around all of our other activities. I think a lot of people think, I need to build a brand. How big should my advertising budget be? Which agency should I hire? How many billboards should I buy? And that is absolutely a great component, especially when you're larger, of building, establishing, evolving your brand. But I think what Salesforce did so well from the very beginning was understanding who we were, what made us different, and threading that through everything that we did. So when I was there and it was a 200-person company, that meant picketing outside of Siebel conferences.
Yep, I remember that.
Yes, people still talk about that. It was 19 years ago. But, when I was 5. But, this whole idea of we were positioning the end of software, the democratization of software, this very disruptive thing, like that was our key differentiator. People weren't doing software as a service. And as the message and positioning evolved, as, try our product, it's easy to use, it's easy to set up. And then, we're enterprise grade, sort of involving that. Like as those messages evolved, they all kind of anchored off of who we were. And we were just so consistent in all of our marketing. And the other thing we did was Salesforce from its very beginning, and I was lucky to be a part of a lot of this, was really aware of the value of putting on a show. So we weren't buying billboards, we were investing in massive customer events. Even when we were very small, the first Dreamforce, 2,000 people, now obviously like largest conference in the world pre-COVID, largest software conference. But really turning those into what the brand was. So that was the showcase of the brand. And it was great because you could control that environment. You basically built your brand there, and you figured out ways to amplify that, to take that messaging, take that positioning, take that creative and the product news and all that, and then package it up and use it throughout the year. But we almost use that to build our brand. It became a big part of our story and who the company was. So it worked really well for Salesforce. And I think it also helped fuel the flywheel of, we put our customers at the center. They loved the product. They loved those experiences. They helped make the experiences and the product better. And it became just this real big ecosystem that helped amplify the brand even before we were buying, or they were buying TV spots during the NFL playoffs.
So, Julie, you were extremely fortunate that you had two founders that you worked with who both embraced marketing, embraced the notion of building a brand very early on. I mean, I remember the no software tagline from Salesforce. And for an engineer like me, it made no sense.
Right.
Like, it used to frustrate the hell out of me. Like, what does this mean? But it was incredible. I mean, it really did create the category. What advice do you have for founders who are very early, have a couple of million in revenues, because that's most startups, have, dozens of customers. So they have product market fit, but they're just getting started. They're 5, maybe 8 years away from an IPO. What can they do at that stage to build their brand?
Well, I think again, it's understanding your differentiator, what makes you unique, and what your customers like about you, appreciate you, what makes you different is job number one. And then figure out all the ways that you can reinforce that play to your strengths. Like, do you have a great story for the press? How can you get that on social? How can you get your customer stories out there? Like, again, it doesn't have to be about big money stuff. It's taking the things that you do, that you are able to do, and being so consistent with them that the pieces start to kind of build momentum on each other. And I think that's why it is so important, like Stacey said, to think about those things early. Because in some ways, when you don't have a giant team and a giant budget, like making sure everything that you do is consistent and connects to the other pieces is the most important thing. And then I think, turning your customers into advocates. And I know that, that's like, of course, everybody wants that, but like, how can you, if you're, early on, the advantage that you have is the care and the interaction that you can have with your customers. That's where the big companies, they can do that for top customers, but they can't, top to bottom, have those deep relationships. So as you were going out and working with your first customers, like, how do you really strengthen those relationships? How do you make them feel like they are really a partner with you, so they can help be part of your story and help amplify it? And they'll also help you understand what the story is that you should really be telling. Because they, in many ways, your customers understand your story better than you do, because to become your customer, they had to believe in something.
Yep.
So what was it they believed?
And I can add to that. And I agree, Julie. At Success Factors, we never spent a penny on brand or advertising the entire time I was there. And I was there 2 years post IPO. We hammered the market through demand gen campaigns. It was also a little bit of a simpler time then, when email was, it was like email, paid search, maybe you were implementing Eloqua if you were lucky. That seems like the dark ages now. There's lots of other ways to put your brand out. But I do think people underestimate how much brand building you can do just by true demand gen that you actually can show an ROI on. I think that the big thing, the problem and the difficulty with swallowing branding and advertising is that it's sort of a spray and pray. You can't really control your audience very much, right? If you decide to spend on a billboard or a TV commercial per se, like who you're going to be showing that impression to zillions of people that are not in your target market. So my advice to smaller companies that don't have the kind of budget to do that is really understand your ICP, your target market, and try to narrow how you're getting your brand to that market. Part of that is, as Julie said, really understand your customer, and not only what's the value you deliver them, but who are they? Where do they hang out? What do they read? What kinds of events do they like to go to? And then you can narrow your spend on activities that will hopefully hit just them and not the zillions of other people. I mean, that's the other thing about an IPO is, like, in an IPO, you're getting a huge investor audience that may or may not even be your target market. So it's good for brand awareness, but it doesn't necessarily give you that ROI. I mean, I contrast Success Factors, which was like HR, love to go to events, really social, like to talk about all of the things that they were doing. We're really looking to elevate their strategic importance in a company. And I think about our mix of programs that we did at Success Factors versus Service Max, which is like field service technicians, mostly male, probably less inclined to go to a big event and more inclined to like be in their garage fixing something. Not nearly as many publications. Like we sort of had to really we created our own microsite. This was way before microsites were a big thing, where we were just hosting content for them. You know, your mix of campaigns really should correlate very directly to who your ICP is.
Yep.
And you can build a brand by just being there versus like advertising to who knows who might see your ad.
I think that's a great point. And one more thing I'll point out is like,
Please.
Your brand is not just your marketing. It's what are your salespeople saying? What's on your, website is obvious, but like, what is your customer support experience? What are those people saying? Is it a good experience, bad? Like, you do need to think beyond, like, every employee has a role. Every touch point with your product has a role. Like, your brand is built, it's not just billboards. It's not just marketing. It's everything about your company.
And that's a learning for most founders. I think it's definitely sort of a journey for them. I'm going to keep going and maybe shift gears to another topic. When we were talking in preparation for this, we talked a fair bit about building a company with a bottoms-up GTM. Product-led growth, PLG, is sort of the buzzword these days. And both of you have so much experience of product-led growth. Maybe, Julie, you can start by talking a little bit about your experiences. Salesforce really pioneered the category of the concept, going back almost 20 years. Can you talk a little bit about that story and how Salesforce went from PLG to multi-million-dollar subscriptions?
Sure. And it wasn't called product-led growth, but, part of the revolution of, no software and software as a service was that you could just sign up and start a free trial of the product, which you could then take that free trial and convert it into your account and pay monthly. And part of that was just the subscription basis, like the nature of what we were doing. But it was such a huge advantage and differentiator. And remember that Salesforce got its start around 2001, which means, there were a lot of struggling companies out here in the Valley who were some of the first adopters. So the ability to try it for free first, to pay monthly, like that was very attractive and really sort of seeded a lot of the success and helped the product get refined and all those other things. And, as a marketer, it's such a huge gift to have that. And it's funny, I ended up sort of using that as an analogy when I went to Slack, which was, one of the poster children for product-led growth, and grew so quickly that way. But, what happened at Salesforce was that was amazing fuel. And then at some point, you run out of customers who are going to buy that way, because we were moving up market, because not every, company is technical enough that their first thing that they're going to do is sign up and start using a brand new product without really understanding how it works. So you have to start sort of building other ways for people to have entry into that. And that does require kind of a shift in the mindset of the company of like, it's going from, basically calling these people that say, you've been using our product for 3 weeks. Can I get your credit card so you can continue using it? To like, okay, let me explain what this is and why you should use it. Let me help you. And you really have to build marketing that is for the, slightly higher up in the funnel type user. And a very similar thing was going on at Slack when I joined, rocket ship growth, unbelievable, without really a conscious effort around marketing for a long time. And then there was marketing, but what was happening was, as Slack was moving up market, and not like saying we want to be up market, but as literally, Fortune 500 companies were starting to use the product and needed a different kind of sales and post-sales experience. Then we also had to start to look at how can we build marketing that will help bring even more of those customers in the fold. And the joke we'd always make is like, sure, a startup in Silicon Valley is absolutely just going to start using Slack, credit card, et cetera. And then it's just about growing with them. But, a large company in the Midwest that maybe doesn't have a huge technical team, they're not just going to start signing up and using this thing. We really have to start explaining the value. Like, why is channel-based messaging important? And, why is this a better way to work? And how can you get started using it? And you really have to hold their hands through that journey. I do think the most important thing, though, is to not think of it as binary, where you're either product-led growth or your enterprise go-to-market. And at Slack, I think the biggest thing that we really tried to reinforce as we were transforming is like, these things are connected, because that product-led growth is still some of the best fuel that you have for every segment in the market. You just have to have things that augment it and help different kinds of customers move along that funnel who can't necessarily jump into the product right away.
That's super helpful. And I think the point you made, it's not either or, but it's you've got to augment product-led growth with a bunch of enterprise-focused actions as your customer base naturally moves up market. I think is an important lesson for founders, because a lot of people think of it as one or the other.
Yeah, and it's so funny because a lot of what you end up doing, I think in that natural evolution is the first set of marketing you need is just helping people use the product. It's all actually connected, like whether they started or not. Like what you're trying to explain is the how and the why and giving them more touch points. And that's going to help all of your users in the long run.
Well, Stacey, you're dealing with some of the same issues now at Freshworks. I mean, it's had a very, very successful run, sort of with a very large number of relatively small customers, and you're starting to move up market as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your journey?
Yeah. I think, I mean, it resonates with me, with us also, what we're talking about here. I mean, we basically have two motions here. We have inbound and outbound. And I think even with PLG, there's a couple of different types of models. If you look at Slack or a Zoom, back in the day it was Yammer. Those are PLG motions that benefited heavily from virality of like, okay, now, Zoom or Slack or Yammer are not useful to me unless somebody else is on the other end of a conversation. Whereas if you look at the free trial in Salesforce or like Freshworks, this is just a department who is looking for a solution to an enterprise use case. It's not about, I need somebody on the other end of my conversation. Because of that, we don't benefit from the same virality of like, okay, but I'm now going to do a Zoom call with 50 other people and suddenly they're on Zoom. Like that just isn't a component to the PLG at Freshworks. Our PLG is, there's a whole slew of people that are looking for something like what we offer. We cast a wide net and we bring them in, and then we let them live through our product, and we hope to convert them through that process. That's our inbound flow. And that sometimes can happen with sales assistants, but for the most part, we just want it to be completely automated. They're looking, we cast a wide net, we bring them to our website, and then we really try to optimize that journey from visitor to sign up to conversion to a paying customer through the trial, or conversion to a free customer that then we try to convert, right? That's our inbound flow. As we've evolved over time, turns out that even bigger companies want to delight their customers and employees in a very easy way. So we've grown upstream. We have much bigger customers, and every quarter, our average customer size gets bigger and bigger. And so we've added a whole outbound sales motion to that. And it's not just sales. So we have SDRs doing outbound calling. We have lists that we're targeting. We have field-based reps that are working deals. As Julie said, when you're talking to a large business, they want to actually see a demo and they want it customized to their business flow. Like you got to do that stuff to win in some of these bigger enterprise accounts. And then we have marketing that accompanies that. So we have field marketing teams. We have integrated campaigns that are all focused on outbound. So as you said, we have over 52,000 customers. And the whole chunk that comes through inbound is one motion. And we have a whole other outbound motion that is also quite effective. It tends to be SMB versus mid and enterprise, but sometimes it swaps through those different motions.
So Stacey, Freshworks really pioneered building a business at incredibly low ACVs. And obviously, you have a much broader range today, but the ACVs in the early days for Freshworks, a lot of people, at least in the US, myself included, were skeptical that you could make the unit economics work at those ACVs. And you've clearly done that very well. Can you talk a little bit about what was the secret behind that and what lessons other founders can take from the Freshworks journey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it goes back to our very first conversation about mission and vision. Our CEO and founder, Girish, had a negative customer experience from a small company, and being a product person was like, this isn't right, that only big companies should have access to great technology to run their operations, and I'm going to go build it. And so he built our first product, which was Freshdesk, with that thesis in mind of like accessibility. So we never started the company saying, hey, I'll start small, but then eventually I'll optimize for enterprise. It's always been staying true to our ethos, which is great technology at an easy on not only resources and timeline, but also just affordability. So that's really baked into who we are. Now, again, we grew because companies of all sizes can benefit from that value proposition. So we really have been pulled up into bigger companies with our success. It wasn't a conscious, I think Salesforce saw the opportunity and said, wow, we're doing really well. Let's go after bigger customers. It didn't evolve that way for us. It was like, we're just staying true to our ethos, which is building great, modern, really easy to use software. And we're going to be successful through volume. And eventually it played out that bigger companies wanted us. And so our ACV kept moving up. And so that's been our success, is a combination of volume and then just moving up into the enterprise organically.
Thank you. Unless either of you had something else to add on this topic, I was going to talk a little bit about product market fit, which is, a very popular topic for early stage founders. One of the questions at a board meeting, almost every board meeting I go to, is, do we have product market fit? What is product market fit? Because no two people can agree on what is the definition of product market fit. You've both dealt with this, and Stacy, in your case, as CEO, and Julie, both at Slack and at Salesforce. I'm sure that's been a topic of conversation. How would you guys define product market fit?
Yeah, and my experience as a CEO at a company that just frankly never found product market fit, and it's a struggle. Having mostly worked at companies that do have product market fit and seeing both sides, it's actually not really that scientific of a conversation. When you have it, you pretty much know it. You can, the trends are moving in the direction. The campaigns and the outbound work that you're launching is having uptake and is converting. If you're constantly grasping at what's the next thing we can try to do to get the metrics moving, you probably don't have it. And there is, sad to say, there is also luck. There is right place, right time. You can have a really great product that the few customers that you have just absolutely love, but you just can't get off the ground and getting enough people to even want to talk about it, then you kind of know. So I would say if you're questioning whether or not you have product market fit, you probably don't have it.
Yeah. So every time the discussion comes up in a board meeting, I can authoritatively say the fact we're having this discussion means we have a real problem.
Yeah. I think it's, are you solving a problem that matters to people? And I think the hard thing is it's not easy to solve a problem, but it's very easy to fall in love with your own creation or your own idea. But there's problems that don't matter enough for people to want to invest the time, the money, the attention. You're really fundamentally, before people's money, you're really fighting for their attention. And is this something that is going to perk up and make people pay attention because it's a problem that really matters, that you're legitimately solving? And may not be a problem they know they have, but is it important enough that once they're aware of it, this is meaningful to them? And to the point, it's not, there's no Cosmo quiz you can take to, is this problem matter? But I do think it is important to, going back to, I think, something that we keep saying, Stacy and I together, is you need to talk to, customers, potential customers, outside people. I think you do need to be wary of, not calling founders delusional, but the founder's delusion of you may build the most beautiful, amazing, wonderful product, but if it's not going to meaningfully solve a problem, why is it worth the attention and time of people? Because no one will think your baby is as beautiful as you do. So, you really do need to get outside probably the bubble of your own sort of founding team, whatever, and really talk to people and make sure that this really is something that's going to break through.
So one of my CEOs has this definition of product market fit, which is, he would say product market fit is when the average salesperson can sell it to the average customer with no one from headquarters being involved. How does that sort of, what would you comment on that?
I think that certainly makes sense. And if that's true, you have product market fit. I think you can have product market fit though before you even have your first salesperson, right? I mean, I like how Julie framed it. Like, and I think about my experience at Zinc, which was we had a great product that our customers loved. And we solved a problem that they had. The problem was there weren't enough companies in our target market that either A, believed they had that problem, or B, prioritized that problem. It was a nice to have. It was not a mission critical. So when we found those companies that had the problem, we were selling, it was great, and they loved it. And that gave us confidence that like, wow, we're doing something great here. But for the most part, our target market had 5, 6, 7 other things that were priorities for them. And they just didn't, it was a nice to have. And it kind of, I mean, I think, yes, if you're solving a problem that is a high priority for them, your sales rep should be able to sell it without the help of the headquarters. But I really do think it's really thinking about how does the problem you solve rank for your target market is a really good way to think about it.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. We're going to run out of time in a couple of minutes, but I did want to squeeze in one final topic because I got a couple of questions in the chat window as well about this. One of the hardest things for a technical founder is making their first VP of marketing hire. They struggle with timing. They struggle with what they should look for. Most technical founders, the first thing that comes to mind is I want leads and I just need more leads. And if I had leads, I could close the deals. But obviously, it's not that simple. And so they're trading off a lot of different skills as they look for their first VP of marketing. What advice do you have for a technical founder who's looking to hire their first VP of marketing? Julie, when would you recommend they hire such a person? What skills should they prioritize?
Yes. Well, first of all, definitely don't start with your VP of marketing. I think, what you need first are some doers and some people who can help you like be scrappy and help you get that stuff out the door. And you want to hire a VP of marketing when you've got sort of some of those scrappy doers and things are starting to hum a little bit, but you're kind of ready for that next phase, whatever that looks like. Because I think if you bring in a sort of senior leader too soon, it's not going to be, they're not going to want to be scrappy enough, and they're not going to have enough runway. If you do get somebody who's going to be scrappy enough, they're not going to have enough runway to lead you through the next phase. I personally don't think any marketing leader is sort of good at every aspect of marketing. So I think you do need to think about, what do you think your company's biggest challenge is? Is it leads? Is it brand awareness? Is it messaging, positioning? And, it's probably all of those things, but what's the most glaring part? What's been the biggest challenge so far? And you can find marketers who are like, I'm more of a product marketer, I'm more of a demand gen person, I'm more of a brand person. And, most of them are candidly pretty aware. I'm very aware. I'm definitely more in like the demand gen school. I can do the other things, but like, that's where I came up. And then I think you also want to always optimize for just general leadership, because what your ideal VP of marketing will do to take you through to like, whether it's take you through to IPO or whatever, is they're going to hire those experts underneath who are better than they are at, well, hopefully everything, but certainly the areas where they're weaker. So, I came into Slack and my top hire was like, I need a head of product marketing, because that is not like the number one thing that I've done. And it's, an area where this company definitely needs an evolution in terms of what they're doing. So you want somebody who can really talk to you in the interview process about how would they hire, how would they approach this? How would they structure the team to make sure they're thinking about it, and then that they're the kind of leader, that they have that kind of experience that is going to attract great talent. Because ultimately, that is the number one test of any leader that you're going to hire, is how are they going to grow a team that is going to be excited to work there and do amazing work to help grow your company.
Thank you. Stacey, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I actually this was probably 5-6 years ago. I wrote an article, what to look for in your first VP of marketing. I think it was on Inc. And very similar. What is the most important thing you need? And I exactly how Julie phrased it, but I also think understanding what you already have. So if you're very, very technical, and maybe you have a good start on the positioning and you think you know how to position, you just need somebody to take it to market, then you really want to just optimize for demand or digital marketing. If you're just like, no, I'm all about features and functions, I don't even know how to talk about this, then you probably need more of a product marketing focus, like really hammer the positioning and the value prop. So some of it is what's important for your company, and some of it is like, the yin and yang of what do you already have on the team and how can they fit. I think absolutely you need a doer, and someone that's going to completely roll up their sleeves. And the hard part is you, especially if you're not experienced with marketing yourself, and many founders are not, you got to be careful that you're not just getting a doer who's going to wait to be told what to do. So you need someone who has that self-starter, and
Yep.
like they're gonna kind of take the rein, even though they may not be VP level. They have that.
They're going to run with it. Yeah, they're
take
going to
the reins and go, because you may not know how to lead them, and then you're just sitting there where they're waiting to be told, and you're like, but I don't know what to tell you, and you get nowhere. And then my last piece of advice is, the best way to figure that out is you have got to do backdoor. You have got to talk to people. And it's not like it is, yes, are they a great marketer, but B, it's those other skills of like, can they hit the ground running? Can they lead without a lot of direction? Can they be part of building something from a strategic standpoint and helping to take it through the next step without just like getting their task list and checking off their list?
Super helpful. Well, Julie and Stacy, we're running out of time, but thank you so much. I mean, this has been such a wide-ranging conversation, from taking companies public to product market fit to, talking about what to look for in a VP of marketing. Thank you both for your time, and thank you for joining us today at FC Build.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.